Welcome to the 26th meeting, January 26th meeting of the Rotary Club of Des Moines. I'm past President Doug Salzgaver, filling in for Matt Busey. And from what I understand, I was fourth choice today. So I'm not going to take any of that from anybody. With that cheery note, we have 8 guests today. As I call your name, please stand and remain standing, as there is substantial penalty for sitting down before you receive as a group your thunderous applause. Sarah Ekstrand, guest of our speaker. Steve Gibbons, Des Moines AM member, guest of Art Feline. Marnie Huckenberg Search, guest of Susan Junkins Jostin. Chuck Kuba, a guest, returning club member. He's not really getting a free lunch today, is he? Man, I'm going to be a guest next week. Nikki Thompson, Chief Clinical Officer at Ellipsis. Angie Weiss, Chief Quality and Compliance Officer at Ellipsis. Both of them are guests of Chris Anderson. Ben Luzak, Des Moines Performing Arts Development Director, guest of Colleen Rogers Messenger. And Stella Vukanovic, Risk Advisor with North Risk Partners, guest of Bob Vendrell. Now we can give them a round. Everybody sit. Today is the last meeting for you to sign up for the Iowa Wolves tickets to help end polio now. This game is next Saturday, February 4th. Sign-ups are on the table to donate tickets to youth at risk or to use on your own to attend this fun evening with other Rotarians. Sadly, we have only sold just under 100 tickets to date, which is well below where we usually stand. If you bought tickets to attend the game, please see Jeff Stickle, as he will have them for you next week. The goal is for each club to donate 1 per member. Tickets are $20, and of that, $10 goes to end polio. I think that's almost 50% of the ticket price, something like that. I have a sign-up sheet on my table as well, so if I don't see some hands moving to write down on those sign-up sheets, I may just start putting individual names down and put you down for 20 tickets. Skeet, I don't see you have a sign-up sheet in your hand. A reminder that we have our tumblers back on the tables again. We ask members who do not have the little green dollar sign on your badge to contribute a suggested $3 in cash. And remember, we only accept 20s and 50s, no change. And even if you do have the little dollar sign and you feel generous today, or even if you don't, go ahead and put some cash in there. And believe it or not, we haven't even factored in inflation over the last several years because we've been at that $3 donation for many years here. We still need 2 volunteers each week to help collect and count the money after lunch. We have volunteers count the money before staff counts and deposits into a cryptocurrency account. Please see Kitty after Rotary if you can help this week. Sign up online or in the lobby for future Thursdays. Thank you for supporting our foundation. It's a big part of our club's impact on this great community. Now I'll turn the podium over to Jackie Norris, who will share a moment of inspiration and lead us in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance and the four-way test. And then Kathy Cody will introduce our guest speaker.
Hey, isn't Doug funny? Come on, isn't Doug funny? As we like to say, Doug, you may have been fourth. We weren't even on the list. So okay? Good afternoon, Rotarians. I'm Jackie Norris. And I don't know about, and I wrote this last night, just so you know, the sun was not out. I don't know about you, but this is the time of year when it is unusually gray, really cold, and sometimes it can impact our outlook on things. So first, I want to ask all of you to take a deep breath. Now I want you to all envision yourself on a sailboat. It is warm, the sun is shining, you are in shorts, the music is playing, maybe you have a cold drink in your hand. And now consider this as you go on in your day. The pessimist complains about the wind. The optimist expects it to change. The realist adjusts the sails. And with that, I ask you to participate in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now the Rotary four-way test.
Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
And you get to say hello to your fellow Rotarians. You know, it's funny, I was thinking of traveling art Thank you.
Doug, I can see it. Sign up. He might even be there.
Yeah, I didn't see him.
Okay, good afternoon. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker today. Kelly Garcia serves as the director of the Iowa Department of Health and Human Services. Governor Reynolds appointed Kelly to oversee the state's social service agency in October 2019, and she was unanimously confirmed by the Iowa Senate in February 2020, right before a little something called COVID came on all of our radars, so interesting timing. Later that year, she was asked to serve as interim public health director, and as a dual director, Kelly led the agency's pandemic response while shepherding consolidation to a single health and human services structure. Today, Kelly leads Iowa's largest agency with a commitment to transparency and accountability. The key to the success is building strong teams, transforming the agency's business processes, and leading a human-centered strategic vision. Kelly will share with us today more about this alignment between public health and human services and her key initiatives in Iowa. Kelly came to us from Texas, and she was coastal before that, so she's enjoying maybe a little bit winter in Iowa. We talked a little bit about that. She's a graduate of the University of Texas at Austin and received her MPA from the Bush School of Government and Public Service at Texas A&M University. So I'm excited to hear from her. Please help me welcome Kelly Garcia.
Hi everyone. I
I hope you don't hold the fact that I went to UT against me for the state game. You can right now because of that terrible basketball game that occurred. All right, well, I am delighted to be here with you this afternoon. I'm Kelly Garcia. I did come to the state to be the Human Services Director, and then the governor asked me to serve as the Public Health Director in the middle of a global pandemic, which you can either laugh about now or send me condolences. But it has really been a journey in the state. Today I'm going to walk you through exactly what we're doing in the agency and why. It's a phenomenal opportunity to bring things together in this state, and the governor announced recently in her condition of the state that there's yet more to come. So we'll talk about that a little bit too. And Sarah's going to help me drive here on the presentation. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about, I think you can go next. Clicker works. There we go. We're going to talk about kind of why now and what makes sense here. I'm going to tell you about how we're bringing together this, and I might be able to do the clicker myself.
Is this the advance?
Yeah.
It's not.
It's not working.
Okay, well then, I'll just point at me and I'll click it.
So I think we can go ahead to the next slide. So today, when I arrived in this state, I asked questions. You know, DHS was the state's largest agency by itself. It was home to the Medicaid program, to child welfare and adult protective services, to child care, and the agency ran 6 state-operated facilities, serving a really important part of the continuum of health and human services in the state. But I asked questions about, okay, tell me about our behavioral health strategic plan, right? Humans don't come in to seek services with just a mental health condition. They often come with co-occurring needs. They need substance use treatment. And when we think about strategies around maternal health, that was living over in a separate agency, but we were serving most of Iowa's pregnant women through the Medicaid program. And so what I saw was a real disconnect between these two agencies and kind of a lack of vision, or perhaps missed opportunities in our ability to really take and design these big structural programmatic goals and really move on them to serve Iowans in a more fulsome way. And so the pandemic then hit. And what we saw during the pandemic were fractures in the system that we already knew existed, but it really shone a bright light on those missed opportunities. And so the governor asked me by design to work on that. And I told her I would give her my honest assessment of whether or not these two agencies should come together. And ultimately I said, yes, they should. And so the last session, the legislature codified our two agencies merging into one. And we're going to talk about that in more detail today. As I did this, I did some of this work in Texas. I arrived in Iowa from Austin, Texas. I spent the bulk of my professional career in health and human services, working for the legislature and a governor in Texas. And I wanted to make sure that the work I had done there, that people didn't see me as just picking up what I had done in Texas and moving it here. Every state is different. I'm very fond of this state. And it needs something different. It needs something different than what we did in Texas, but I had a lot of really good lessons learned. So this was not Kelly's manifest destiny of building an agency. I really wanted to be focused on what was best for the state, built by the people who do this work and the vast array of stakeholders who live in this space. And so we set out with that really clear intention. It was not predetermined. We knew change was predetermined, but exactly the construct of what we were building was not predetermined. I didn't sit in my office and build an org chart. We really developed something that works for this state, and that we wanted it to be transparent. So really open, I don't know another way to be, really open, lots of dialogue, and it took us more than a year of that stakeholder involvement to build what you're going to see today. I love this graphic, and I want to spend just a moment on it. It really does show how public health and human services are inextricably linked. So when we think about upstream prevention, right, or I'm going to talk about child welfare for a second. You know, child welfare is unfortunately a need. There's no state that will ever be able to figure out exactly how we don't do it, although I think all of us wish we wouldn't have to. But when we think about solving those problems, you think about child welfare being a safety net service. It's a last resort. When all of our other interventions have failed with a family, those children come into our care, into the state's care and custody. And so in our system, when we're doing things right on the human service side of things, we're really doing that through a public health early intervention lens. We're thinking about not how are we going to fix this problem, but instead how do we go upstream and really talk about the root cause of the issue. So every day in our agency, we're serving Iowans. We serve all Iowans through those public health functions. You know those functions now because of COVID, whether you knew them before or not. We also have vital statistics roles. So if you're born here, die here, get married here, divorced here,
We are your record keepers for the state, and we maintain other really key data points through that public health arm. Every day we're doing acute disease surveillance. So we were scanning for Ebola, right? These are things that happen that we do, and we tell you when you need to know. Of course, that's been more present in the last several years because of COVID, but think about when there's a bag of lettuce that needs to be recalled at your local grocery store. That's a public health function. That's happening through us, with a lot of disease surveillance happening when an illness occurs in a cluster in Iowa. And so we're doing that work. That protects all Iowans, but we're serving kind of a subset of the population on the human service side that we really have an opportunity to bring together. So like maternal health strategy. And maternal health strategies are upstream prevention. What ails us around maternal health? Why do we have poor outcomes for women who are having babies in this state? And what are the interventional efforts to make sure that that doesn't occur? But at the same time, more on the human services side, we are paying for nearly half of the births through the Medicaid program in this state. So what opportunities do we have through that major insurance line to do better? And when we do better by half the population, we do better for all. All right, next slide. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about our mission, vision, and guiding principles, and I'll go through this a bit quickly. So we did, as I mentioned, we surveyed and had really intensive feedback from more than 500 individual stakeholder groups, but with more than 1,400 comments. And we did all staff town halls, which when you have teams of 5,500 people, it's hard to do. It took a whole day, and we had to divvy it up into different groups, but we had a lot of really deep participation from our stakeholder groups, which include our hospitals in the state, our local public health entities, emergency responders, clients themselves, and a whole host of other people. Our principles are really focused on that integration, right? I kind of talk about health and human services being a team sport. I mean it. There's not one entity that says grace over this work that kind of gets it right on first take, and so we really do need to have this very integrated approach, and that is part of our foundation. You can see here our mission statement, which was built by our team members and kind of refined by myself and the executive team. It's really focused on protecting and improving the health and resiliency. The resiliency part is incredibly important for all Iowans, for families and the communities they live in. And our vision is really deeply intertwined to that mission statement, but adds in a lens of equity, which is incredibly important to us. We do that through everyday work that is focused on these key points. So we use data, and that's a really big force and focus in our agency. We hold ourselves accountable, so we admit when we make mistakes. We try not to repeat them. We do our work with integrity and pride. We think about equity and decisions that we're making because, again, when we lift that floor, we lift it for all Iowans. We over-communicate what we're doing so that we're not in an agency making big decisions about Iowans without them. And we do all of this work in a really collaborative way. We've rebranded our agency too. This was a really important part. So we took two legacy structures that really matter for Iowans to know. It's an official statement from the state, and we have rebranded, of course, our name change, but we have official communications that are better integrated with our broader portfolio of work. And Sarah Ekstrand, who was just introduced, is our communications director, and she's been heavily involved in this work. We have a new website design and more to come in kind of the visual representation of the story we're telling about the work we're doing in our agency. So we spent, to get to this table of organization that I'm about to preview, I had the team build it. It was really important to me that I not be embedded in those discussions until the very, very end of the presentation. I ultimately did make a few tweaks to the org chart you're going to see, but it was really largely built by our team, which means they fully believe in it too. And that was really important. That was a lesson learned from Texas. We sat in a room in Texas and we designed the org chart. And ultimately we broke a few things we didn't mean to because we didn't involve the folks who were on the front lines doing the work. But also, and I had a really wonderful boss and mentor who told me, you know, Kelly, they know, like, you're an appointed official. They know that you'll go. And so you want this work to outlive you as a change agent. And I really do a lot of my work in that philosophy. So we really focused on our frontline folks who are out in the field doing this work every day to help craft what you see today. And it worked nearly identically to what I developed in my office when I compared the two. The couple of tweaks I made were refining points that the team ultimately was fully supportive of. So it worked just as planned. And this is a little hard to see, but this is our Health and Human Services organization, and I'm going to quickly go through what we do here. So the first three vertical streams here are the bones of the agency. So we're a nearly $12 billion organization. We have 5,500 employees. So we have a massive IT structure for our Medicaid system, child welfare case management system, vaccine records, public health data, et cetera, right? Every day we have claims engines that are moving things back and forth. So we have our own internal IT structure, a very sophisticated finance, budget, and planning team, and they do phenomenal work. We have a compliance arm that's new. I created that. This was part of the design. I told the governor 21 days into my tenure in the state, where I was very literally still using Google Maps to get to work. I was still driving on I-35, but I got very turned around in my directions. And I live out in West Des Moines. I received a notice from the Department of Justice opening an investigation at two of our facilities, one in Glenwood and one in Woodward. You probably have seen the Glenwood piece on the news. The pieces of that work were standard DOJ investigations, not good by any stretch of the imagination, but something I had experienced before in Texas. But the second part was around human subject experimentation, which is a terrifying investigation to receive from someone who's newly in their capacity. And what I learned in those very, very early days of my tenure was that our agency was not equipped to handle some of the pieces of understanding early warning signals that would tell us something's wrong in the system. And so as I sat with the governor in that Saturday after I received the notice from Department of Justice, I said, we have to build this out. We need, we're a billion-dollar organization, multi-billion-dollar organization with no internal audit team, with no way to understand when signals are being sent up that something's wrong. And so we have that now by design for the first time in the agency's history, respective legacy agencies' histories. And it is led by Sarah Reister. You know her from those COVID press conferences, tall blonde. And she is an attorney by trade. She has a long history of experience in state government, and so she is helping us build this out in a way that really allows us to catch those issues before they become real concrete issues, either found by Auditor Sand or found by the Department of Justice when we've had a lot of impact along the way. We also have a new vision around strategic operations. So every state agency has to do a strategic plan. It's a kind of check the box function. It's lots of lovely words. We have a lovely team member who writes it, but it's not a strategic plan in the way you probably experienced your strategic visioning in the work that you do. And now it will be. So it's a really by design set of individuals who tell our story in a really concrete way. What are the goals that we're working on? How are we holding ourselves accountable with toll gates to tell you what we're doing? And how are we communicating that to our internal team and to the huge number of external partners we work with and the clients we serve, or for that matter on the public health side, all Iowans. What's our vision? What ails us? What are we working on? How are we going to do this work better? And then from there, we start on the programmatic function. So these first three lines in my own job doesn't work. We don't have jobs without the programmatic lines, but we are there to support their work. So the Medicaid program is led by Director Liz Matney, and we are doing a phenomenal amount of really transformative work in the Medicaid space. We are redesigning our waivers. They support individuals with disabilities of all kinds in the state, and so just a tremendous amount of work in this area. We still operate 6 facilities, 2 mental health institutions, 2 ICFIDs for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, although we are on a path to close the Glenwood facility I mentioned. We operate a unit for sexually violent offenders, and we operate a boys' state training school for justice-involved youth. And so a lot of focus on our role in those safety net services and the broader continuum of services for Iowans. We now operate behavioral health and disability services, and this is the conversation that got the whole thing going with the governor. Before, Legacy DHS had the mental health services, and IDPH had substance use. And today we have a co-occurring needs portfolio that will ultimately leverage and pull down more funding from our federal partners and create a framework that allows Iowans to more easily access services in their community. We're also building out an office that has a broader portfolio of suicide prevention. Post-COVID, in the early last year, so about this time last year, we saw a cluster in Des Moines of suicide that was shocking and shocked our federal partners. We were not prepared to really respond in the way we wanted to and knew we needed to. And so born out of this alignment, we are building out a broader profile where we're able to see issues that are arising in different parts of the state and respond in more real time instead of on the after side of things. And that is absolutely where we should be for kids and for adults. We're also building out a broader profile of work for people who have developmental disabilities, which is distinct and different than intellectual disabilities and is a real need in this state. So skill sets and expertise here. And so this vision really kind of comes together. It comes together also with the legislature and the governor's move to have a state-funded mental health and disability services structure. And so real guiding vision around what we're doing so that all Iowans have equal access to services in the state. Next is our public health arm. We've talked a lot about that today. I've talked about acute disease surveillance. We also do emergency response. And a variety of other functions, vital statistics, as I mentioned, and then our state medical examiner's office. We serve most of the counties in the state, although not Polk. We're backfilling for Polk and helping them out while they're searching for a new forensic medical examiner, but in general, we don't serve Polk. Community access and family well-being is where the most change happens in our organization. So community access builds out all of our assistance programs into one section of the agency. Before it was kind of smattered among multiple agencies and multiple divisions in the agency. And what we're going to do there is really build out a front door for Iowans to more easily seek services. So Iowans don't know exactly what they need. We need to tell them what path to go into. And so we'll be doing that. We'll also be building out warm referral sources that connect Iowans in need to community supports that are available and unique to communities. And so this section is new. It has never existed this way before, ever in the state's history, and we are tremendously excited about the IT advancements and the work to be done here with our community partners. We also put our Medicaid adjacent programs here, our preventative health programs that serve largely moms and kids, but not exclusively. And we have a real focus here on preventative health. So dental services and WIC lives here. Our nutrition focus lives here as well. And then last, but certainly not least, is family well-being and protection. An intentional renaming of the work we do, with Child Protective Services being the safety net service that I just described, but with a real focus on how we keep families together, unless we absolutely can't. We know that it is best for kids to be with families. Just removing a child from a family is a trauma that child will never get over. There's no zero-sum risk in this endeavor. But we're building out a line of prevention services that bring home visiting programs and early childhood Iowa together to better support kids and ultimately families. We're asking ourselves a lot of really deep questions in this space. I've got an external assessment of Child Protective Services work active right now. And when we submitted that request for proposal, which is the way we get business in our world, I asked a cornerstone question: are families and children better off because our agency is involved? And in some cases today, the answer is no, and we will do better by this work. So we have incredibly transformative work happening in this space as well, with, for the first time in the state's history, a single statewide director overseeing Child Protective Services. It's always been diffused to 6 individuals who report up through different chains in the organization. We now have one phenomenally talented individual named Lori Frick, who is on the eastern side of the state and has wanted to be in child welfare since she was 12 years of age. She is serving the state as the state's first CPS director. We're also putting a child care office together. I'm still a mom who uses child care. I came to parenthood later on in life, and I oversee the programs, and it was hard for me to find a space. And so we can do better in childcare as well. I certainly would call on each of you and your respective professional capacities to come with us and have this conversation about how we really expand access for working parents in this state. We're not going to get through this without strong business partners. But wait, there's more. So we're gonna go through a couple of slides. I'll actually fast forward, I think, to the end. I just kind of worked through the other key leadership positions. So in the governor's condition of the state, she talked about HHS and the alignment, which was a moment of pride for me as I was on the floor, that it was a glowing endorsement of the work that we've done, although there was much more to come. She has encountered where she would like to realign state government as a whole. And as part of that broader realignment effort, she is introducing a bill, it's not yet fully dropped, but she's introducing a bill that will realign the number of cabinet level appointees she has, and it will continue to reshape our work in health and human services. So we will receive the Department on Aging, and that makes complete sense. A lot of that work is interconnected to some of the work we do with adult protective services, the public guardian office, that matters for our Medicaid space. And there's a tremendous amount of work that we do on the Medicaid side that supports individuals being able to age in place successfully. And so that makes sense in our mind. And Director Miller, who runs that agency, is very supportive of that movement. Early Childhood Iowa, we're already working very closely with them. That entity works with local communities and local boards, but sits in the Department of Management outside of the bulk of the work that we do around childcare. And so we're just bringing them closer in so that we can actually operationalize the work that they bring to the table. We also are recodifying our statutes. So I'm sure the news, once this bill drops, this bill is very big. It's about this thick because it's all of state government. We're about 900 pages of the bill. But by and large, those changes are just recodification. They're deleting the legacy agency names and putting forward our new agency name. But the governor also mentioned an intention to move in the Department on Human Rights. That will expand our profile on equity. It will expand the number of programs we have around support, services and supports, financial supports for low-income Iowans, which will really help us on that front door. And we'll build out deeper connections to our community partners who run community action agencies. They also do some juvenile justice work. And while we do not oversee juvenile justice in the state, when you're talking about child welfare, you're always talking about diverting kids out of the juvenile justice system. And I think we can see by this week's news, there's a lot of work to do in that space. Volunteer Iowa. So this is new and fun to me. Texas set up this volunteer capacity. Think about your VISTA programs and your AmeriCorps programs. Set it up a little bit differently through a nonprofit, but this work lives with Director Durham over in IEDA today. Well, when you think about volunteers, largely you're thinking about human service functions. And so we are delighted to think about receiving Volunteer Iowa and how we can deploy volunteers in a more cohesive strategy in the state. And then last, but certainly not least, child advocacy boards are administratively attached to the Department of Inspections and Appeals today, but their work is primarily focused on child protective services and serving families and kids in that space, youth in that space. And so we'll be having a lot of discussions about where exactly they land, but the need for more partners in that system is undeniable. So we're excited to have this conversation with the legislature, and we're, of course, always grateful for the governor's support around our work. She has been tremendously supportive through this effort. I set out with a very ambitious list to bring these agencies together of what I thought it needed to do it right, to be successful. This is big. It's really big work. It's a lot. And she has absolutely come through on every single thing I've asked her for. Which is wonderful. And we're excited about what's to come in our redesign and transformative work now in the programmatic areas. So the best part of this discussion really is the questions, and I'm hopeful you have some for me. And I'm supposed to repeat the questions, so.
Thank you for your presentation. I have friends that run agencies that help people with developmental issues.
Mm-hmm.
Why do they have to fight to get increased in their rates? When they're losing money, and the governor decided a bill yesterday that I disagreed with for $345 million to put in private schools, where it could be put there, or should be put in public education, in my opinion. So what do you do about that?
So the question is, for those who couldn't hear, it's really centered around rates, especially for individuals and providers who are serving individuals with disabilities. It's a great question. So the work that I mentioned in our Medicaid space is really centered around better supporting individuals with disabilities, as I mentioned. There is money in the system, but it needs to be recalibrated. So the way we serve people outside of an institutional setting, so think about like not in a nursing home, but in the community, right, is through a waiver design. That's how all states serve individuals with disabilities. And we have 7 of them. They're very complicated, they're hard to access, there are wait lists. And what we're doing is redesigning them so that we can bring down those wait lists and give providers more sustainable rates to serve those individuals. So we hear you, we agree, and we absolutely have a plan that will effectuate those more sustainable portfolios of how to serve individuals. Last session, our #1 agency goal, absolutely endorsed by the governor, was to put money in rates for providers, specifically focused on direct care workforce staff, because if we can do all this redesign, but if we don't have the people to do the work, it will be for naught. And so that did pass, and there's a continued investment this session.
Well, I hope it's paid attention to because it's needed by these agents very much so.
Yes, sir. Completely agreed. Yes.
Do I remember correctly that all this sort of started when the state government did away with running Medicare and Medicaid and outsourced that to private companies and so forth, but then withdrew?
So the question is around our Medicaid move to managed care and whether that's caused some instability in the program, because there was kind of a bumpy transition to the move to managed care in the state. I didn't live here at the time, but I have been the beneficiary of a better understanding some of the fallout there. So those two, you're not wrong. I mean, that was definitely a bumpy transition for the state. But the issues that you're talking about around rates are not tied to the managed care organizations directly. The managed care organizations queue off of the state's fee schedule. So that's us, right? That's our programmatic design. But there have been issues with timely payment on the managed care side. What I would tell you is that Liz Matney and I have a fulsome plan around managed care oversight and better integration. We announced back in the fall that we would be bringing a 3rd MCO to the state, because I feel like the state is just now stable to move forward into the space that was kind of originally designed. And that 3rd MCO brings to the table a real community focus and focus on better serving individuals with disabilities in a way that I think will be very beneficial to our members. So we are in a much different space than that kind of original rollout of managed care. And we are doing regular rate reviews as an agency to make sure that we don't backslide, kind of to your earlier point, Bob, around not making intentional rate investments or making them in the wrong places. So I think a better, more thoughtful vision around where those rate investments should occur, which is just not something the agency was doing. So it sometimes gets conflated with managed care, and I certainly understand why, but a lot of this is around the state's programmatic design that kind of lacked the vision here, and we've been working really long and hard on that over the last 3 years. Thanks. Yes, sir.
Yes, I know you referenced, we're going to close Glenwood. You referenced the governor's remarks, and I hear her reference how big of a surplus we have so often. Yet I also hear we're ranked at or near the bottom in mental health beds and care. How does that make our Iowans that need those services feel when they hear how much extra money we have to pay?
So the question is around mental health bed capacity, where we rank as a state, and kind of what that looks like when I think all leadership acknowledges that there's a surplus. So what I would say around the space is that the mental health bed capacity number is a tricky one to use as a benchmark. We do not need to over-institutionalize people, and if you go out to any one of our facilities, you see, in some cases, thousands of acres that used to be farms where thousands of people lived, and that is not a way we would serve anyone in this day and age. And so our real focus as an agency is not to do away with that entirely, but to kind of recalibrate the system so that we build out that true continuum of care and really focus on those community supports. And that is exactly where we're focused. Our waiver redesign that I've mentioned, our rate reviews show that we have to better invest in behavioral health rates in our side of the system. You're going to hear me talking a lot about that this session. And so I think we are squarely focused on that. The money piece of it, of course, is for the legislature to debate, and there's a broader look that I don't have a full lens into. But certainly from the agency, you're going to hear us talk about all of that. We absolutely fully acknowledge. There's some spaces where we're doing really well, and the work that Iowa has done is kind of starting to bear some fruit. But there are some spaces where we still have significant gaps. Kids' beds on the inpatient side is one of them. And so we have a department bill this session that refocuses our work at our Independence Mental Health Institute to focus on children and adolescents. So we have 2 wards, one for littler kids and one for adolescents. Today we've got 5-year-olds and 17-year-olds in the same space. We're seeing the acuity and the need of kids change, and we need to respond to that. So we're going to reshape the way we do our business so we can better support it. So I think we are laser focused on that. We also have a community needs assessment that we've been doing for the last more than a year. That is, I literally just got the draft earlier today. It will be public within the next couple of weeks, maybe shorter the time frame than that. And you'll be able to see what does the landscape look like. So if you pair that work, which is driven by us, and definitely we have eyes wide open about where the cracks are, where the flaws are. I think we have a North Star vision around it. And then we take some of the work, like with our Department of Justice investigation, where they will compel us, right? We're under a federal order. They will compel us to make an investment. If all of that comes together and we do this strategically, Iowa will have exactly what you're talking about.
I'll
Yes.
look forward to it.
Yes, likewise. Chuck?
Thanks for your presentation. There's a lot of it in there that deals with communications, transparency. Is ESL and adult ESL falling within this bailiwick, or is that in a different area?
That's a great question. So his question is around adult ESL and whether we have any programs that are designed for that. Well, we certainly have an obligation around translation and accessibility. So we do not say grace kind of over the teaching, training, et cetera, kind of components of a second language or any other accessible space needed for an individual, like an individual who's blind or has a hearing impairment. But we have an obligation as an agency to make sure that we are interfacing in a way that is accessible. So as the Department of Human Rights moves in, we will really lift our portfolio around language capacity and our accessibility, which we are not where we know we need to be around either today. And so we're excited about those, kind of deepening those partnerships. I think most of that work happens more, at least for kids, on the education side of things, like Department of Education. Very good question. I don't know who's going up first. I think you did.
I ran into a bizarre situation about a year ago with my brother who had measles and brain damage from that.
Oh dear.
And so he lives by himself, but he needed some help. In order to qualify the help, he could not have more than $2,000 in his bank account. Well, he doesn't spend any money, and he had 4. So I was in the situation of taking him to Walmart and buying a bunch of stuff that he didn't need so that he could get the program that he did need. And when I saw the eligibility section, it brought to that, is there something that can be done to get rid of the attitude that somewhere, someone, somehow might be getting away with something, and that you can deal with these things more rationally?
So a very thoughtful question around kind of personal experience around Medicaid eligibility and kind of what economic threshold you have to qualify for the programs. We queue off of our federal partners. We can make changes as a state. We can increase thresholds in certain areas, but we are limited around that. You know, we kind of serve 2 distinct populations, individuals who are on SSI and have disabilities and low-income Iowans, and sometimes those 2 intersect, not always. And we have to draw the line somewhere, right? So there are a few programs that allow us to go over income, but it sounds like your brother might not have qualified exactly as he needed to. And you're right, it's a cumbersome process. I think the role that we can play beyond, of course, policy conversations, which there's one going on, I think, literally right now, in the gold, underneath the Gold Dome, around eligibility and what it takes to verify income and those types of things. We certainly can, you know, when I talked about that front door, making sure that Iowans or their family members who are often advocating and helping them navigate on their behalf, or providers, understand what's available. And I definitely know we have a ton of work around that space, like making sure that you understand what services are available. But we are always seated at the table around ensuring that our benefit programs best align to not create perverse incentives or to not leave vulnerable Iowans in a crack without services. So we're definitely committed to that as an agency, and we look forward for the continued conversations, you know, with the legislature and our federal partners.
Thank you, Kelly, for spending time with our club today and sharing your message with us. And also thank you for your service to our state, even though you are a Longhorn. As a token of our appreciation, we're giving a book in your honor to the Des Moines Public Library. Your book will become part of the Rotary Rosie Reader Van collection. This traveling library has reached scores of readers across Des Moines since 2020, when our club donated $40,000 to the library to finance its purchase. Upcoming meetings. Remember, you and any guests you wish to bring need to RSVP by 9 a.m. on Wednesday before each week's meeting. February 2nd, Polk County Supervisor Matt McCoy here at the Embassy Club. Also, that same night, February 2nd, we will also have a special meeting event for Black History Month at the Des Moines Public Library Central Location, featuring our own members, the young, beautiful, and talented Elaine Estes, and Hal Chase. That will occur at 5:30 to 6:30. There's an information sheet on your table if you'd like to know more about that. February 9th, Peter Orzum, Iowa State University economist. Probably a Longhorn could have read that better. February 17th, we will not be here, so we can attend President-elect Bessie? Man, what is wrong with me? What's in that iced tea? Becky Greenwald's February fling at the Greater Des Moines Botanical Garden. Invitations will be mailed out soon. This will be from 6:30 to 9:30 in conjunction with their Dome After Dark event. Sounds ominous. We will have a private room with fun activities as well as access to this event. It's my understanding that the fun will be so intense that it is considered illegal in several states. And special thanks to our sponsor, Craig Isbin of Next Level Ventures, for helping us with this event, and another anonymous donor. Anonymous, is that something similar to Mr. Irrelevant? Maybe we'll get Brock Purdy here in a few weeks to speak. Okay. Thank you for being with us here today and for being part of the Rotary Club of Des Moines. We are adjourned.